Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the largest ship humanity had ever built. The USS Titan's Edge was hidden deep inside the Kepler Nebula where no alien eyes could find it. For 15 long years, human engineers had worked day and night to create this monster of metal and technology. The ship was 12 kilometers long and packed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Jake looked out at the swirling gases of the nebula through the main screen. His gray hair and tired eyes told the story of a man who had spent too many years preparing for a war that might never come. But today, everything would change. Today, the galaxy would learn what happens when you push humanity too far. Captain. Lisa Hayes walked up to him with a data pad in her hands. She was younger than Jake, but just as determined to protect human lives. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight military style, and her blue eyes showed the same anger that burned in every human heart these days. "Admiral, we just received the message from New Haven," she said quietly. "The Kethvar horde has invaded the colony. 20 million people are trapped on the surface." Jake took the data pad and read the emergency transmission. The words made his blood boil with rage. New Haven was a peaceful farming colony on the edge of human space. The people there had never hurt anyone. They grew food and raised families and lived simple lives far from the politics of the galaxy. "What did the Galactic Council say?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "They said it was regrettable, but the humans chose to settle in contested space," Lisa replied with disgust in her voice. "They offered no help, no ships, no rescue mission, nothing." Jake crushed the data pad in his strong hands. The Galactic Council was made up of dozens of alien species who thought they were better than humans. The Zephyrians with their crystal ships looked down on human technology. The Vorthak with their energy weapons called humans primitive. The hegemony treated humans like children who should be grateful for any scraps of attention. For 200 years, humanity had tried to fit in with these aliens. They followed their rules and begged for their approval. They accepted insults and discrimination because they wanted to be part of the galactic community. But Jake was done with all of that. "Signal all stations," Jake commanded. "Prepare the ship for immediate departure. We're going to New Haven." The bridge crew moved into action. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers. They knew what the Titan's Edge could do. They had seen the test firings that could crack moons in half. They had watched the shield tests that stopped weapons powerful enough to level cities. Chief Engineer Paul Grant spoke up from his station. "Admiral, all systems are green. The Helios cannon is charged and ready. All weapon systems are online." The Helios cannon was humanity's greatest secret. It focused the power of a small star into a beam that could destroy anything in its path. The aliens had no idea such a weapon existed. They thought humans were still using crude missiles and simple lasers. "Engineering reports ready," called out Lieutenant Amy Johnson. "Navigation has the course plotted. We can reach New Haven in 6 hours. Jake nodded and sat down in his command chair. This chair had been waiting for him for 15 years. Every day he had hoped he would never need to sit in it. Every night he had prayed that humanity would find peace with the galaxy. But the aliens had made their choice when they abandoned 20 million innocent people. "Take us out of the nebula," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed to New Haven." The Titan's Edge began to move. Its massive engines pushed the giant ship forward through the swirling gases. As they cleared the nebula, space opened up before them like a black ocean filled with stars. Jake had spent his whole life among these stars, first as a young officer on exploration ships, then as a captain fighting pirates on the frontier. He had always believed that humans could earn their place in the galaxy through hard work and good intentions. He had been wrong. The only thing the aliens understood was power. Today, they would get a lesson in human power that they would never forget. "Admiral," Lisa said as she sat down beside him, "are you sure about this?" Once we reveal the Titan's edge, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we can do." Jake looked at her with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Lisa, my grandfather fought in the last great war on Earth. He used to tell me that sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect what they love. The aliens think we're weak because we try to be peaceful. Today, they learn the difference between weakness and restraint." The ship jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the nebula continued to swirl with its ancient gases. Ahead of them, a colony of 20 million humans waited for salvation. They had no idea that help was coming. They had no idea that their rescue would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. General Marcus Cole watched the sky above New Haven turn dark with enemy ships. From his position in the orbital defense station, he could see the Kethvar horde dropping out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. 300 bioships of different sizes filled the space around the colony world. Each ship was alive, grown instead of built, with weapons that shot deadly plasma beams. The Kethvar were nightmare creatures from the edge of the galaxy. They had no homeworld because they lived on their ships and moved from system to system like locusts. They took what they wanted and left nothing but empty planets behind them. In the past year alone, they had destroyed 17 different worlds, and the Galactic Council had done nothing to stop them. Marcus grabbed his communicator and called down to the surface. "Governor Williams, how long until the evacuation ships are ready?" Kate Williams was in the planet's capital city trying to keep 20 million people calm while their world was about to be invaded. Her voice crackled through the static. "Marcus, we need at least 6 hours to get everyone loaded onto the transport ships. The children and elderly are moving slowly." "We don't have 6 hours," Marcus replied as he watched the first wave of Kethvar landing craft break away from the main fleet. "They're already sending troops to the surface." Down on New Haven, Colonel Ryan Adams was preparing his soldiers for a battle they could not win. He had 50,000 trained fighters spread across 3 continents. The Kethvar were sending down at least 2 million warriors. The math was simple and terrifying. Ryan stood on the walls of New Detroit, the colony's largest city. Behind him, civilian transports were loading families as fast as possible. Children cried as they were separated from parents who stayed behind to fight. Women kissed their husbands goodbye, not knowing if they would ever see them again. "Colonel," said Lieutenant Ben Parker as he ran up with a field report, "the Kethvar are landing in 12 different locations. They're surrounding all our major cities." Ryan looked through his binoculars at the enemy landing craft. They looked like giant insects with metal shells and glowing red eyes. When they hit the ground, they split open like seed pods and hundreds of Kethvar warriors poured out. Each warrior was 2 meters tall with natural armor that could stop most bullets. Their weapons fired bioplasma that could melt through steel. "Tell all units to fall back to the city centers," Ryan ordered. "We can't stop them in open ground. We have to make them fight for every street and every building." The first battle began at dawn. Kethvar warriors moved across the farmland outside New Detroit like a living wave of death. Ryan's soldiers fired everything they had, but the aliens kept coming. For every Kethvar that fell, 10 more took its place. In the orbital station, Marcus watched his defense satellites being destroyed one by one. The Kethvar bioships were too fast and too many. His weapons could barely scratch their living hulls before they regenerated the damage. "Sir," called Communications Officer Dana Clark, "I'm getting reports from all our ground units. They're being overrun on every front." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. He had sworn to protect these people, and he was failing. The Kethvar had done this same thing to 17 other worlds. They would capture most of the humans alive and turn them into slaves. The children would be raised as warriors for the Horde. The adults would work in their biofactories until they died. On the surface, Kate Williams was helping load the last group of children onto an evacuation transport when the plasma beams started falling from the sky. The HFY ships were targeting the spaceport to stop the evacuations. One beam hit a transport that was taking off, and the ship exploded in a ball of fire. "Get those ships off the ground now!" Kate screamed into her radio. "We're out of time." But there were still millions of people waiting to be evacuated. The transports could only carry so many at once, and there were not enough ships for everyone. Kate knew that most of these people would never leave their home world. Ryan's soldiers fought like heroes, but they were being pushed back street by street. The HFY warriors were stronger and faster than humans. Their weapons were more powerful, and they never seemed to get tired. Worst of all, they fought with the coordination of a hive mind that made them impossible to surprise or outflank. "Colonel," Ben Parker reported as explosions shook the building around them. "We've lost the Eastern District. The aliens are 3 blocks away from the evacuation center." Ryan looked at his remaining soldiers. They were tired and scared, but they had not given up. These men and women knew they were probably going to die, but they kept fighting anyway. That was what made humans different from the aliens. They fought not just for themselves, but for everyone they loved. "All units, this is Colonel Adams," Ryan said into his radio. "I know this looks bad, but help is coming. I don't know how, or when, but someone out there is going to save us. Our job is to hold the line until they get here." Marcus heard the transmission from his orbital station. He wished he could believe it, but no human fleet was close enough to help. The nearest battle group was 3 days away, and these people would be dead or captured by then. The Galactic Council had made it clear that they would not interfere with HFY expansion. But as Marcus watched the slaughter below, something strange appeared on his sensors. A massive gravity signature was approaching the system at incredible speed. Whatever it was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The first sign that something massive was coming was not seen, but felt. Every ship in the New Haven system suddenly experienced a gravitational pull that made their navigation computers go crazy. On the bridge of the largest HFY bioship, the Horde Queen felt her living vessel shudder as space itself seemed to bend around them. The Horde Queen was an ancient creature who had conquered 100 worlds in her long lifetime. Her bioship was the size of a small moon and carried weapons that could crack planets in half. She had never felt fear because nothing in the galaxy was stronger than the HFY Horde. But now, something was making her ship tremble like a frightened animal. "Send scout vessels to investigate the disturbance," she ordered her warriors through their mental link. The HFY did not speak with words like other species. They shared thoughts and emotions directly from mind to mind. 3. Scout ships broke away from the main fleet and moved toward the source of the gravitational anomaly. What they found waiting for them in the darkness of space made their biosensors scream warnings that had never been programmed into their genetic memory. The USS Titan's Edge emerged from hyperspace like a metal mountain given the power of flight. 12 kilometers of human engineering and determination materialized in the void, bristling with weapon arrays that seemed to break several laws of physics. The ship's hull was made from a dark composite that absorbed light and gave the massive vessel an ominous presence that sent waves of primitive terror through every alien mind that looked upon it. Admiral Jake Morrison stood calmly on the bridge as reports flooded in from his crew. Around him, the most advanced technology humanity had ever created hummed with quiet power. The bridge was designed like a cathedral of war, with high ceilings and massive view screens that showed the battlefield in perfect detail. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Amy Johnson from the tactical station. "I'm reading 300 HFY bioships of various classes. They're moving to intercept us." Captain Lisa Hayes stood beside Jake's command chair and watched the alien fleet begin to turn toward them. "Sir, they're trying to surround us. Should we take defensive positions?" Jake's smile was cold as winter on Earth. "No, Lisa, we didn't. Come here to hide. We came here to send a message that will echo through every system in the galaxy." The Titan's Edge had been built with one purpose in mind. It was designed to face impossible odds and emerge victorious through superior firepower and human determination. Every weapon system on the ship had been tested against mock-ups of alien technology. Every defensive system had been designed to counter known enemy capabilities. But most importantly, every human on board understood that they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. "Chief Grant," Jake called to his engineering section. "Status on the Helios cannon." Paul Grant checked his readings and felt a thrill of excitement run through his body. For 5 years he had worked on the Helios Cannon project, designing a weapon that could focus the power output of a small star into a beam barely wider than a pencil. Today, he would finally see if all their work had been worth it. "The Helios Cannon is charged and ready, Admiral. All targeting computers are locked onto the Horde Queen's flagship." The Kethvar fleet began their assault with the confidence of predators who had never met anything stronger than themselves. Bioplasma weapons lit up space as hundreds of alien ships fired their most powerful attacks at the human vessel. The plasma beams struck the Titan's Edge and simply stopped, as if they had hit an invisible wall. The ship's adaptive shielding technology was based on principles learned from studying 6 different alien species over 2 centuries of careful research. Human scientists had taken the best ideas from each race and combined them into something that was greater than the sum of its parts. The shields did not just block incoming energy, they absorbed it and redirected it back into the ship's power systems. "Admiral," Lisa reported with amazement in her voice, "their weapons aren't even scratching our outer shields. The energy absorption rate is at only 12% of maximum capacity." Jake nodded with satisfaction. 15 years of preparation and planning had led to this moment. "Target the Horde Queen's flagship with the Helios cannon. Full power." Tapason, weapon that humanity had built in secret charged with energy that could have powered entire cities. Deep in the ship's core, magnetic fields stronger than those around neutron stars focused raw stellar energy into a beam that existed at the very edge of what physics would allow. "Helios cannon ready to fire," Paul Grant reported. "Target locked. Fire," Jake commanded. The beam that lanced out from the Titan's Edge was invisible to human eyes, but its effects were immediately and terrifyingly apparent. The Horde Queen's flagship, a bioconstruct that had survived 1,000 battles and conquered dozens of worlds, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or damaged or blown apart. Gone. Vaporized at the molecular level as if it had never been there at all. The silence that followed was absolute. 300 Kethvar bioships stopped their attack as their shared consciousness tried to process what had just happened. Their greatest leader, their most powerful ship, their invincible queen, had been erased from existence by a single shot from the human vessel. On New Haven's surface, Colonel Ryan Adams watched the skylight, up with the death of alien ships, and felt hope return to his heart for the first time in hours. In the orbital defense station, Marcus Cole stared at his sensors in disbelief as the massive alien fleet began to scatter in panic. But Jake Morrison was not finished. The colonists below were still in danger, and 20 million human lives hung in the balance. "All weapons," he ordered with the voice of judgment itself. "Open fire. I want every Kethvar ship in this system turned to cosmic dust." What followed the destruction of the Horde Queen's flagship was less a battle and more a demonstration of human superiority that would be remembered for 1,000 years. The USS Titan's Edge unleashed weapons that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about human technology and military capability. Railguns fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, turning Kethvar bioships into clouds of superheated plasma. Missile pods launched warheads with yield outputs that dwarfed small suns, each one guided by artificial intelligence systems that could think faster than any organic mind. Point defense systems turned incoming enemy fire into harmless particles before it could even reach the ship's shields. Chief Tactical Officer Sam Brooks called out target eliminations with mechanical precision as his weapons systems systematically dismantled the HFY horde. Cruiser-class bioship destroyed. Destroyer-class eliminated. Fighter swarm neutralized. Heavy assault vessel vaporized. The remaining HFY ships tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The Titan's Edge could track and destroy targets at ranges that made escape impossible. One by one, the bioships that had terrorized 17 worlds died in brilliant flashes of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. On the world below, Governor Kate Williams stood in the ruins of New Detroit and watched the sky burn with alien death. Around her, human colonists emerged from their hiding places to witness something that would change their understanding of their own species forever. Children pointed at the explosions above, while their parents wept with relief and pride. Colonel Ryan Adams gathered his surviving soldiers in the city square. These men and women had fought against impossible odds and held the line when everything seemed lost. Now they watched their enemies die in the cold vacuum of space and knew that humanity had finally shown its true strength to the galaxy. Colonel, Lieutenant Ben Parker said as he monitored enemy communications. The HFY ground forces are surrendering. All across the planet, they're laying down their weapons and requesting mercy. Ryan looked at his soldiers and saw the same mixture of disbelief and savage satisfaction in their eyes. For too long, humanity had been seen as weak by the other species. Today, that perception died along with the HFY fleet. In the deep, space monitoring stations that surrounded every major system, alien observers watched the battle with growing horror and fascination. The Zephyrian Empire had a science vessel hidden in the asteroid belt that recorded every moment of the human assault. The Vorthak Confederacy had spy satellites that captured detailed scans of the Titan's Edge and its impossible weapons. Ambassador Elena Ross sat in the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime and watched the live feed from New Haven with carefully controlled emotions. Around her, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in stunned silence as they witnessed the systematic destruction of one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. The Zephyrian Chancellor, a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm, spoke first. Perhaps we have been premature in our assessment of human military capabilities. The Vorthak representative, a creature of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell, pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern. Their weapons technology appears to exceed our own by several generations. How is this possible? Elena kept her face neutral, but inside she felt a fierce joy. For 200 years, humanity had endured insults and discrimination from these aliens. They had been treated like primitive children who should be grateful for any attention from their betters. Today, that treatment would end forever. On the Titan's Edge, Admiral Jake Morrison received reports from across the battlefield as his ship completed its terrible work. The HFY horde that had conquered 17 worlds in a single year had been reduced to scattered survivors begging for their lives. Admiral, Communications Officer Dana Clark reported, "We're receiving surrender broadcasts from the remaining HFY vessels. They're requesting permission to withdraw from human space." Jake considered this request carefully. Mercy was a human concept that many alien species did not understand or appreciate. But perhaps it was time for the galaxy to learn that humans could be as generous in victory as they were terrible in war. Grant them safe passage out of the system, Jake decided. But transmit this message on all galactic frequencies. Any force that threatens human colonies will face the full might of Earth's fleet. This engagement involved only one of our ships. The lie was perfect and calculated to maximum effect. Let the galaxy believe that humanity had more Titan-class vessels hidden in secret bases. Let them wonder how many more weapons like the Helios cannon existed in human arsenals. Fear would keep the peace better than any treaty. Lisa Hayes stood beside Jake's command chair and watched the surviving alien ships flee toward the edge of the system. "Sir, do you think they'll believe we have more ships like this one?" Jake smiled grimly. "They'll believe what they want to believe, and what they want to believe is that we're not a threat to them. But now they know better. Now they know that threatening human lives has consequences." In the hours that followed the battle, rescue ships arrived from nearby human colonies to help with the evacuation and recovery efforts on New Haven. Medical teams treated the wounded while engineers began repairing the damage caused by the Kethvar assault. But the real healing would take much longer. The galaxy had changed in a single day. Humanity was no longer the junior partner begging for acceptance from superior alien civilizations. They were now a major power that commanded respect through superior firepower and the willingness to use it in defense of their people. News of the battle spread through the galactic communication networks faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders held emergency meetings to discuss the implications of human military capability. Trade routes were redirected to avoid human space. Military alliances were reconsidered in light of this new balance of power. 3 months after the Battle of New Haven, the galaxy had become a very different place. The Kethvar horde, which had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades, had completely dissolved. Their surviving warriors scattered to remote systems rather than risk another encounter with human forces. The bioships that had once seemed invincible now hid in asteroid fields and dead systems, afraid to show themselves in any sector where humans might be present. Admiral Jake Morrison found himself in the uncomfortable position of being the most famous and feared military officer in the galaxy. The Titan's Edge sat in Earth's orbital shipyards, supposedly undergoing routine maintenance but actually receiving upgrades that would make it even more powerful than before. New weapon systems were being installed, improved shields were being calibrated, and additional armor plating was being welded to the hull. "The alien governments are all requesting meetings," Captain Lisa Hayes informed him as they walked through the ship's corridors. "The Zephyrian Empire wants to discuss mutual defense treaties. The Vorthak Confederacy is offering technology exchanges. Even the hegemony is talking about formal diplomatic recognition." Jake laughed bitterly at the irony. After 2 centuries of treating us like barely civilized barbarians, they suddenly want to be our friends. Funny how quickly attitudes change when you prove you can turn their fleets into scattered atoms. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment much longer than any of the aliens suspected. While they dismissed human technology as primitive, human scientists had been secretly studying alien artifacts and developing countermeasures for every known weapon system in the galaxy. The Titan's Edge was not just a ship, it was the culmination of 200 years of careful planning and preparation. President Helen Carter had called Jake to a private meeting at the Pentagon to discuss humanity's new position in galactic politics. The weight of what they had accomplished, and what it meant for the future of their species, was just beginning to sink in among Earth's leadership. "The question now is what we do with this power," President Carter said as she reviewed intelligence, reports from across the galaxy. "Every major government is afraid of us. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but fear alone won't build the kind of future we want for our children." Secretary of Defense Charles Bennett spread out star charts on the conference table. "The other powers are demanding to know our fleet strength. They want detailed information about how many ships like the Titan's Edge we have and where they're stationed." Jake studied the charts and considered their options. Let them wonder. Uncertainty is our greatest weapon now, but we should be building more ships. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we've just painted a very large target on ourselves. The construction of additional Titan-class vessels had already begun in secret facilities throughout human space. Shipyards in the asteroid belt worked around the clock to produce the specialized components needed for humanity's new generation of warships. Each ship would be more advanced than the last, incorporating lessons learned from the battle at New Haven. On distant worlds, Human colonies that had lived in fear of alien raids now held their heads high with pride. Children who had grown up, hearing stories about the superiority of alien technology, now dreamed of joining the fleet that had proven human ingenuity could triumph over any enemy. Recruitment offices across human space were flooded with volunteers eager to serve on ships like the Titan's Edge. Ambassador Elena Ross stood before the Galactic Council for the first time as a representative of a major power rather than a junior species begging for recognition. The great chamber on Nexus Prime, which had once ignored her very presence, now hung on her every word with careful attention and barely concealed fear. "Humanity seeks partnership, not dominance," she declared to the assembled aliens. "We have no desire to conquer or subjugate other species, but let it be known throughout the galaxy that we will defend our people, our colonies, and our allies with every weapon at our disposal." The response from the alien representatives was immediate and telling. Where once they had dismissed human concerns with condescending patience, they now listened with the respect accorded to a peer. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were suddenly approved within days. Territorial disputes that had favored alien claimants were quickly resolved in humanity's favor. But not everyone in the galaxy was pleased with humanity's rise to power. In the shadows of dead systems and abandoned worlds, the remnants of the Kethvar horde plotted their revenge. Other aggressive species began forming alliances to counter the human threat. Criminal organizations that had preyed on human shipping for generations now avoided human space entirely. Jake understood that the Battle of New Haven was just the beginning of a larger conflict. "We've bought ourselves time and respect," he told his senior officers during a strategy meeting, "but there will be others who test our resolve. When that day comes, we need to be ready." The development of new weapons and defensive systems continued. At a frantic pace in laboratories across human space, scientists worked to unlock the secrets of exotic matter, antimatter containment, and dimensional manipulation. Engineers designed ship components that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Military strategists studied every battle in Galactic history to develop tactics that would give human forces maximum advantage. 6 months after New Haven, construction began on 3 more Titan-class ships in secret facilities hidden throughout the outer colonies. Each vessel would be crewed by the best and brightest officers humanity could produce, trained in academies that taught both the art of war and the principles of human civilization. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood on the observation deck of the orbital shipyard and watched workers putting the finishing touches on humanity's expanding fleet. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human dominance in the galaxy was about to begin. As he often reminded his officers during training sessions, humanity had not come to the stars to bow before alien masters or accept second-class citizenship in someone else's empire. They had come to the stars to be free, and they would do whatever it took to remain that way. 1 year after the Battle of New Haven, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace that fooled no one with any understanding of interstellar politics. While the major powers publicly praised humanity's contribution to galactic stability, their intelligence services worked overtime to discover the secrets behind human military success. Spy networks that had been dormant for centuries suddenly became very active in human space. Admiral Jake Morrison, now Fleet Admiral of Earth's Deep Space Defense Initiative, stood in the war room beneath the Pentagon reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The wall screens showed star maps marked with enemy fleet movements, suspected spy bases, and potential trouble spots where human colonies might come under attack. The Vorthak have increased their patrol frequency along our border by 300%, reported Intelligence Director Sarah Kim. They're using deep space sensors to map our shipping routes and military installations. The Zephyrians are worse, added Colonel Mike Torres from the Army Intelligence Division. They've been sending crystalline probe ships through our territory, disguised as commercial vessels. We've caught 6 of them so far this month. Jake studied the reports with growing concern. The other powers were clearly preparing for something, but he could not determine exactly what they had planned. What about the hegemony? They're being more subtle, Sarah replied. Instead of direct spying, they're offering huge payments to human scientists and engineers in exchange for information about our technology. 3 of our people have already been approached with offers worth millions of credits. The truth was that humanity's military advantages were more fragile than the galaxy realized. The Titan's Edge was still the only ship of its class in active service, though 3 more were under construction in secret shipyards. The Helios cannon technology was incredibly complex and expensive to produce. Most importantly, the alien powers were beginning to develop countermeasures to human weapons and tactics. Captain Lisa Hayes entered the war room carrying classified reports from the frontier colonies. Her expression was grim as she approached the main briefing table. Sir, we have a problem. The HFY survivors have been rebuilding their strength in the Outer Rim. Intelligence estimates they have at least 50 bioships operational again. That's not the worst part, she continued. They've been modified. Someone has been helping them upgrade their weapons and defenses. The bioships now have energy shielding similar to our own adaptive systems. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. The HFY had been broken as a military force, scattered and demoralized by their defeat at New Haven. For them to rebuild so quickly, they would need massive outside support from one of the major powers. Who's helping them? Jake demanded. We're not certain, but the technology appears to be Vorthak in origin, Sarah Kim replied. The energy signatures match their shield generators and weapon systems. This was exactly what Jake had feared. The alien powers were too proud to directly challenge humanity after the devastating loss at New Haven, but they were perfectly willing to use proxy forces to test human defenses and gather intelligence about human capabilities. President Helen Carter arrived for the emergency briefing along with Secretary of Defense Charles Bennett and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The room fell silent as Earth's leadership gathered around the holographic display showing current threat assessments throughout human space. How bad is it? President Carter asked without preamble. Jake activated the star map and highlighted areas of concern in red. We're facing a coordinated intelligence gathering operation by at least 3 major powers. The HFY are being rebuilt as a proxy force to probe our defenses, and we have credible evidence that several minor species are forming an alliance, specifically to counter human expansion. What are our options? Asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Limited, Jake admitted. We can't fight the entire galaxy at once, and our technological advantages are already being copied or countered. The Titan's Edge is still the most powerful ship in space, but one ship can't be everywhere at once. Charles Bennett leaned forward over the table. What about the new ships under construction? The second Titan-class vessel will be ready in 6 months, Colonel Torres reported. The 3rd and 4th ships are still at least a year away from completion. Even then, 4 ships can't patrol all of human space effectively. The discussion continued for hours as Earth's leadership grappled with the reality of their situation. Humanity had announced their arrival as a major power with devastating effectiveness, but they were still vastly outnumbered by potential enemies who were learning to work together against the human threat. We need allies, President Carter finally concluded. Are there any species in the galaxy that might be willing to work with us? Sarah Kim consulted her intelligence files. The Altarian Republic has had border disputes with the Vorthak for decades. The Centauri Federation lost 3 colonies to HFY raids before we destroyed their fleet. There are at least a dozen minor species that have reasons to oppose. Our enemies, Jake nodded thoughtfully. Divide and conquer. If we can't face the entire galaxy alone, we split them up and deal with smaller groups. But that means we need to be very careful about who we trust and how much we reveal about our capabilities. The meeting ended with orders to increase intelligence, gathering operations, and begin discreet diplomatic contacts with potential allies. Human agents would be inserted into enemy territory to gather information about their plans and capabilities. At the same time, ambassadors would begin the delicate process of building a coalition of species willing to stand against the growing anti-human alliance. As the senior officials filed out of the war room, Jake remained behind to study the star. Maps. Somewhere out there, enemies were plotting humanity's downfall. They had seen human strength at New Haven and decided that humanity needed to be eliminated before they became too powerful to stop. But they had made a critical mistake. They assumed that humans would fight like other species, following predictable patterns and respecting traditional rules of warfare. They had no idea that humans had spent their entire history learning to survive against impossible odds through cunning, determination, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect their people. The attack came without warning on a cold Tuesday morning when most of the galaxy thought humanity was finally accepting its place as just another member of the galactic community. The Kepler Research Station, humanity's most advanced scientific facility, simply vanished from all communication networks. When rescue ships arrived at the coordinates, they found nothing but empty space and scattered debris. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Titan's Edge as his crew analyzed the wreckage. The research station had housed over 10,000 scientists and their families, all working on projects that would advance human technology and improve life throughout their colonies. Now they were gone, victims of an attack so sudden and complete that no one had even managed to send a distress signal. Admiral, Chief Science Officer Dr. Amanda Foster reported from her station. The debris patterns suggest multiple attackers using high-energy weapons. Based on the molecular signatures, I'm detecting Vorthak energy disruptors, Zephyrian phase cannons, and hegemony plasma bombs. Captain Lisa Hayes looked up from her tactical display with anger burning in her eyes. Sir, this was a coordinated strike by the three major powers. They used the attack to test our response time and gather intelligence about our defensive capabilities. Jake felt a cold fury building in his chest that reminded him of the day New Haven had been attacked. The alien powers had made a calculated decision to murder 10,000 innocent humans in order to send a message about humanity's place in the galaxy. They wanted humans to know that their strength was limited and their reach was not as long as they pretended. Sir, Communications Officer Dana Clark called out. I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. President Carter wants to speak with you immediately. The holographic image of the president appeared on the main screen, her face showing the strain of someone who had not slept in days. Behind her, Jake could see military advisors and intelligence officials reviewing battle plans and threat assessments. Jake, we've lost contact with 6 more research facilities in the past 12 hours, President Carter reported without preamble. They're targeting our most advanced scientific installations. This is clearly a coordinated campaign to cripple our technological development. What are our orders, Madam President? Jake asked, though he already knew what the answer had to be. Find out who's responsible and make them pay. The gloves are off, Admiral. Show them what happens when they murder our people. The transmission ended, and Jake turned to address his crew. These men and women had trained for this moment their entire careers, but he could see the tension in their faces as they realized that humanity was about to enter a war that could determine the fate of their entire species. "All stations, this is the Admiral," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "As of this moment, we are in a state of war with unknown enemies who have attacked civilian targets throughout human space. Our mission is to find these enemies and destroy them completely." The Titan's edge began moving toward the coordinates where intelligence suggested the enemy fleet was hiding. Long-range sensors detected a massive formation of ships in a nebula near the galactic core, far from any inhabited systems. The enemy had chosen their position carefully, believing that distance would protect them from human retaliation. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. "Admiral," Lieutenant Amy Johnson reported from the tactical station, "I'm reading over 400 ships in the enemy formation. Vorthak, Zephyrian, and Hegemony vessels, plus at least 50 rebuilt Kethvar bioships. They've assembled the largest fleet in galactic history." Jake studied the sensor readings and felt a grim satisfaction. The enemy had gathered their forces in one location, probably intending to use their overwhelming numbers to crush any human response. Instead, they had given him the opportunity to destroy their entire alliance in a single battle. "Chief Grant," Jake called to his engineering section. "Status on all weapon systems." Paul Grant checked his displays and smiled with anticipation. "All systems green, Admiral. The Helios cannon is charged to full capacity. The new Omega warheads are loaded and ready. Point defense systems are online. The Omega warheads were humanity's newest weapon, developed in secret laboratories using technology reverse-engineered from alien artifacts. Each warhead contained enough antimatter to destroy a small moon, guided by artificial intelligence systems that could think faster than any organic mind. "Sir," Lisa Hayes reported as they approached the enemy fleet, "they're moving to intercept us. It looks like they're not planning to run." Jake nodded with approval. "Good. I want them to stand and fight. I want the entire galaxy to watch what happens when you attack innocent humans." The battle began as soon as the Titan's edge came within range of the enemy fleet. 400 alien ships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with enough destructive energy to sterilize entire star systems. The combined firepower of 3 major powers struck the human ship and was absorbed by shields that had been upgraded with technology stolen from the enemy's own databases. "Their weapons are having no effect," Amy Johnson reported with amazement. "Shield strength is holding at 97%. Jake smiled coldly. "Return fire. All weapons. Show them what human engineering can accomplish." What followed was not a battle, but a demonstration of human superiority that would be remembered for millennia. The Titan's edge unleashed weapons that made the destruction at New Haven look like a minor skirmish. The Helios cannon fired repeatedly, each shot erasing enemy ships from existence. The Omega warheads turned entire formations of alien vessels into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. "Vorthak Heavy Cruiser Squadron destroyed," Sam Brooks called out from his weapons station. "Zephyrian Battle Group eliminated. Hegemony, Dreadnought Fleet neutralized. The enemy tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The Titan's Edge had been equipped with the most advanced, faster-than-light drive humanity could build, allowing it to chase down and destroy ships that thought they were safely retreating to distant systems." Within 6 hours, 400 enemy ships had been reduced to drifting wreckage. The largest military alliance in galactic history had been annihilated by a single human vessel, proving once and for all that quantity could never overcome superior technology and determination. 2 years after the Battle of the Nebula, the galaxy had been completely transformed. The 3 major powers that had once dominated interstellar politics were now broken remnants of their former selves. The Vorthak Confederacy had lost half their territory to human expansion. The Zephyrian Empire existed only as a collection of isolated systems that begged for protection from Earth. The hegemony had dissolved entirely, its member species fleeing to the outer rim to escape human justice. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Titan Station, humanity's newest and largest military base. Built in the ruins of the enemy fleet he had destroyed, the station served as both a monument to human victory and a warning to anyone who might consider threatening human interests. Through the massive observation windows, he could see the construction yards where dozens of new Titan-class ships were being built. "The surrender documents have been signed," Admiral Elena Ross reported as she entered the command center. The former ambassador had been promoted to military command after her success in building the coalition that now supported human leadership throughout the galaxy. "The last of the HFY survivors have agreed to serve as auxiliary forces under human command." Jake nodded with satisfaction. The HFY, once the terror of the Outer Rim, were now completely dependent on human protection for their survival. Their bioships had been refitted with human technology, and their warriors retrained to fight alongside human forces instead of against them. "What about the minor powers?" Jake asked. "Complete cooperation," Elena replied. "The Altarian Republic has formally requested inclusion in the Human Defense Coalition. The Centauri Federation is offering their entire fleet for joint operations. Even the distant Outer Rim species are sending tribute and requesting protection agreements." The transformation had been swift and total. Within months of the Battle of the Nebula, human fleets had swept through enemy territory with unstoppable force. Advanced weapons and superior tactics allowed relatively small human forces to defeat alien armies that outnumbered them by tremendous margins. More importantly, humanity had proven that they fought wars to win them permanently rather than just achieving temporary advantages. President Helen Carter arrived at Titan Station for the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Treaty, the document that would formally establish human leadership over the galaxy's political and military affairs. The ceremony would be broadcast to every inhabited world, making it clear that the age of alien dominance was over forever. "Jake," President Carter said as they reviewed the final preparations, "I want you to know that history will remember what you accomplished here. 2 years ago, humanity was barely tolerated by the other species. Today, we are the undisputed leaders of galactic civilization." Jake looked out at the construction yards where new ships were taking shape. Each vessel was more advanced than the last, incorporating improvements learned from studying captured alien technology. Within 5 years, humanity would have the largest and most powerful fleet in galactic history. "Madam President," Jake replied, "we didn't fight these wars to become conquerors. We fought them to ensure that no one would ever again treat human lives as expendable." The signing ceremony took place in the station's main assembly hall, with representatives from over 200 species in attendance. The alien delegates sat in careful rows, their body language showing the mixture of fear and respect that now characterized their attitude toward humanity. Ambassador Elena Ross stepped up to the podium to address the assembled delegates. "Today marks the beginning of a new age in galactic history, an age where disputes are settled through negotiation rather than warfare. An age where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. An age where human values of justice and cooperation guide the development of interstellar civilization." The treaty was signed by every major power in the galaxy, formally recognizing human leadership and establishing the framework for future cooperation. Under human guidance, The galaxy would be organized into protection zones where smaller species could develop their civilizations without fear of conquest or exploitation. But Jake knew that the real work was just beginning. Building a lasting peace would be much harder than winning the wars that had brought them to this point. Humanity would need to prove that they could govern wisely as well as fight effectively. Admiral, Captain Lisa Hayes approached with a data pad containing the latest fleet reports. The 4th Titan-class ship completed its trials yesterday. The 5th and 6th ships will be ready within the month. At this rate, we'll have 20 operational vessels by the end of the year. Jake reviewed the reports and felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The fleet that had begun as a single secret ship hidden in a nebula had grown into the most powerful military force in galactic history, but more importantly, it had become the foundation for a new kind of civilization based on human principles. "Sir," Communications Officer Dana Clark called from her station. "We are receiving reports from the Outer Rim. A previously unknown species has been detected in the Andromeda approach vectors. They appear to be hostile and are moving toward our territory." Jake smiled grimly as he considered this new challenge. There would always be threats to human civilization, whether from within the galaxy or beyond it. But humanity had proven that they could adapt to any challenge and overcome any enemy through superior technology, tactics, and determination. "Prepare the fleet," Jake ordered. "If these new aliens want to test human resolve, we'll give them a lesson they won't forget." As alarms began sounding throughout Titan Station and human ships prepared for another battle, Jake reflected on how far they had come since that day when the Kethvar had attacked New Haven. Humanity had transformed from a barely tolerated minor species into the undisputed masters of galactic civilization. The human age had begun, and it would last as long as humans remained willing to fight for what they believed in. And knowing his species as he did, Jake was confident that would be forever.